That's right, it's time for another of our eagerly awaited geology map-making devblog videos. Today we're looking at the Hellroaring Mountain map, the upcoming DLC map. The centerpiece of this map is Hellroaring Mountain itself, which is the largest granite mountain in Yellowstone, and it has got a lot of granite. We did not go up the mountain on our hike there, but even from the trail we could tell there was a lot of granite up there. It's very hard to find photos from up on the mountain, but Dan Staler, Yellowstone wolf biologist who has advised WolfQuest for many, many years, and who recently took over as the head of the Yellowstone Wolf Project after Doug Smith retired, very kindly took some photos of the mountain when flying past it on a recent research flight to study wolves up in the northern range. Now, of course, my first choice is always to recreate the environment as closely as possible, and I was eagerly awaiting these photos from Dan, but when he sent them, I looked through them and I'm like, oh, come on. It's all granite. I mean, it's just all granite with a little bit of dirt and trees. And that is a real challenge. Because our terrain topography has to be low resolution, because it's a big map and it has to run on reasonable computers. And so we just can't do this level of detail. The amount of mesh and texture memory that recreating this mountain in full detail would be extremely difficult, even if you had $200 million like Red Dead Redemption did. And pathfinding and navigation around here as a wolf would be daunting and probably very annoying. But we still want to capture the feel of being up amongst all these granite outcrops. So the geology of this is basically very similar to Slough Creek in the graniteness of it. But I took another crack at the granite terrain texturing, wanted to get a little closer to what I can see in the photos. And so here are two rock textures, just plain granite and then that kind of lichen-y mottled look. So here I'm going to tint the lichen texture red just to be able to tell better as I work on some noise patterns to try to have some random variation in where there's granite and where there's lichen to get a nice variegated surface texture like you see in the real world. And that looks pretty good. I think that's better than Slough Creek. Might bring this back to Slough Creek at some point. Now granite is an igneous rock, but instead of being formed from volcanic eruptions, it forms underground deep in the earth as pools of magma slowly cool, and then later geologic uplift pushes it up to the surface. And somehow Hellroaring Mountain has survived many phases of geologic activity that dominate most of Yellowstone National Park and still stands there today. But because of the way the magma cools, it creates these kind of rounded domes, which then can fracture and that sort of thing. But the fundamental shape are these domes. And so we want to create these on the slopes of the mountain going up to the summit. And so I'm using a new tool here by Jason Booth called Microverse to manipulate the topography and the texturing of the terrain. And so this is kind of cool. I'm using the same control texture that I'm using for the granite texturing, and I can use it to raise up the terrain under the granite surfaces and kind of round them off and tweak them. Let's see, want to have them round a little bit. So as always, there's a lot of little tweaking and fussing with this kind of thing to get it to look, about how you want. Now, the magma forms in these kind of smooth, rounded domes, but of course, over time, pressure, they are metamorphized a bit into gneiss, spelled G-N-E-I-S-S, and often crack and fracture and chunks fall off, and they get very chaotic. And again, given the resolution of our terrain, we can't get too detailed on that, but we can add some cracks. So that's what I'm going to do here. I've got this overlay effect that I can place on the rock areas of the terrain, adjust the scaling down to get it, maybe that's probably too small, something like this. If you get close, you can tell it's not an actual crack in the surface, but it's a pretty good illusion. And then because these mounds do fracture and crack and split off chunks due to freezing and thawing over the seasons, I want to add some boulders that match the general look here and are kind of strewn about. So toss those in there, spread them around, add some patches of gravelly, loose rock. That helps a lot too. And then we back up quite a distance from the mountains. We've got some other normal noise effects that will give it some roughness, some bumpiness. So that's where we're at with Hellroaring Mountain itself. Probably not done yet, but it's coming along. But one notable feature of the game map is two very different geologic areas. You've got the granite of Hellroaring Mountain, and then you've got some areas that are glacial till, basically the big, broad, flat area to the east here that slopes up to Buffalo Plateau. And to the west, the forests and grasslands around the Cottonwood Creeks. Going to be a lot of den sites around here especially. But down here, this is the Yellowstone River, and this is actually called the Black Canyon of the Yellowstone. And this is made of metamorphic rock called schist. It was probably mudstone and siltstone, but it's metamorphized so much that it's hard for geologists to really be sure. and we got a good look at it at the suspension bridge over the Yellowstone. And so I've got a number of nice rock models here, because here we really do want this jaggy stuff. And it's a small, confined enough area that we can do that. So I've been tweaking the textures on this to kind of get that mudstone turned metamorphic schist appearance. And here we'll just pop these on one after another, what I've been working on to place them around this little bend in the river. And then what we need, final piece here, is bring down the suspension bridge. So it was fun to walk across the suspension bridge on our hike into the Hellroaring area, and now it's fun to walk across as a wolf. Oh, except this tree should not be here. Need to clear that out. 3D artist Damian Patterson, who's been doing a bunch of stuff for us recently, including those fractured boulders up on Hellroaring. He made this beautiful recreation of the suspension bridge. So this map is well underway, still quite a lot to do, and we've got some other cool stuff coming to it, so stay tuned.